Freelance photography is a great way for photographers to get paid for their work. I think a lot of people see that as a new avenue to make money, and it's not a bad way to do so, but there's a truth that I don't think a lot of people understand when it comes to freelance photography, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. What's up guys, it's a Project Photography back with another video, and today so I've been doing freelance photography for an amount of years now. I have not doing it full-time, but I've been doing it part-time for about 3 or 4 years now. I've gotten paid for various clients doing various things like commercial work for different companies, or even real estate photography is what I've been doing recently, and even portraiture photography. And I've come to the realization that I don't think people understand this one truth about freelance photography. The fact that it's actually extremely difficult to get into, and it's also extremely difficult to make a full-time living off of. I think a lot of people think that photography is not that hard. All you have to do is click a button and boom, you get amazing photos, but it's really much more difficult than that. And this is really a video to all of you out there who are considering going into being a full-time freelance photographer, because in reality, there is a lot that you need to learn, need to understand. But I think the most important thing is just you need to understand if this is the right thing for you. I think a lot of people confuse loving something as a hobby with wanting to do something as a full-time job. There's a big difference between the two. And if we're being real, freelance photography is definitely not for everybody. And there's 3 main reasons why I think this is. So let's jump right into the first one. The first one is that you need to know other skills other than photography. With myself, I am actually in college right now. I am a marketing major in college, and you might be thinking, you know, if you're going to college and you want to do freelance photography, wouldn't you do something in photography? My reasoning is this, that I'm already pretty good at photography. I mean, I was able to do pretty well on my YouTube channel and get some clients while doing so. And here's the thing, I know how to do photography. That's the easy part. The hard part is how to sell, how to run a business, how to market yourself, how to set correct prices, how to advertise. And there's a bunch of other skill sets that are involved with running a photography business, because you need to remember, you're not just a photographer, you're also a business person as well. You're also an entrepreneur. That's really what you are when it comes to freelance photography. You understand, you know, how do I set prices so that it exudes quality and it gets me paid for the work that I'm able to produce? I think that's one of the hardest things to do as a photographer, is set the right prices. You know, in my marketing classes, we've always talked about how price to an uneducated audience, which most people who are looking for photographers are, how price can actually exude quality. You know, when you have something that is of a higher price, they usually you think and correlate higher quality to higher price. You know, that's why Maseratis and Lamborghinis cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, where Honda Civics cost $20,000. You know, people associate that. Even though it might not always be true, people associate quality with price. I think a lot of photographers don't realize that, and I think that's why it's so important to learn the business aspect of photography. Because being a great photographer is hard enough, but if you don't know how to market yourself, if you don't know how to get your name out there, and if you don't understand, you know, how do I communicate with clients and get the business, it's just gonna be extremely hard to be a photographer and do it for a living. And there's a bunch of other skill sets that you need to know, including how to create logos and graphic design for all these other projects, also how to work Instagram and Facebook, not just being an organic influencer and all that, but how to advertise on those platforms and do all these other sorts of things. You know, it's really difficult. And for my recommendation, if you're going into college or you want to learn another skill set besides photography, definitely learn how to market and how to run a business. Those are the most important aspects of photography when it comes to freelance photography. So please learn that if you want to get into being a freelance photographer. That's what I'm doing, and it honestly helps a lot. I cannot stress how helpful it's been for me in my own personal work. So let's talk about the second reason why it's extremely hard to make a living doing freelance photography, is because it is harder than ever to actually make money with photography. Now, I say this because, first of all, there's more photographers than ever doing more and more free work. Now, I made a video as to why I hate it and why I don't think photographers should be doing free work. There's a number of reasons. And there's also because getting clients is actually extremely difficult, especially because people devalue photography more than ever. People have smartphones in their pockets. Everybody has this device, which can shoot pretty decent photos. Now, to a photographer, they might not be amazing photos, but to your everyday average person, they might be pretty decent photos. So they might not see photography as a difficult skill set that it actually is. And on top of that, competition is very high. I know a lot of photographers out there that have a hard time getting clients, and because there's a lot of photographers out there doing the same thing. And again, going back to my previous point, setting prices is really hard, and that's a big part of actually getting clients. So making money in and of itself is hard in any sort of niche, but I think it's even harder than ever for photography for those main reasons. You know, let's talk about getting clients, because that's actually extremely hard. If you've never ever done photography in your life for a living and you've never actually gotten a client, it's really hard to actually get your first client and get paid for it. I think a lot of people confuse busy work with actual paid work. And busy work is, in a sense, doing free work. And I think people associate doing free client work with being a freelance photographer, but it's really not, because you're not getting paid. At the end of the day, if you're a photographer and you want to do this for a living, you have to get paid for it eventually. And if you continue to do this unpaid work, you're not gonna ever make a full-time living off photography. So making money with photography is actually very hard. You need a good amount of clients. You need to be able to get paid for that work. And in this photography climate that we're in, especially our industry, we're getting more and more devalued than ever before. And overall, it's actually hurting our bottom line, which is to make money and be profitable. So let's talk about the third and last reason why being a freelance photographer is actually very difficult. It's because the line between doing photography for fun and doing it as a job is extremely blurry. Now, I think a lot of you have heard this saying, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. But I don't think what a lot of people understand is that if you do what you love for a living, it might start to feel like work rather than fun. And now that is an extremely important point. And I think a reason that a lot of people should reconsider being freelance photographers, because for me personally, I do photography for a living. I do it because I love to do it, and I do it just because I'm really passionate about it. But there are points in time where I'm going out and doing real estate work where I feel like, you know, this does start to feel more like work rather than a hobby, because, you know, you're getting paid for it. You're not really doing it because you want to do that job, but rather because you're getting paid for it. So that distinction is really, really important. And I think, and you really like to ask yourself, you know, is being a hobbyist photography is being a hobbyist photographer okay with me? Or do I really, really, really want to go into freelance photography and risk losing the passion of being a photographer in the first place? You know, I think that's a question that a lot of artists have to ask themselves, not just photography, but in art in general. When you're going from just a hobbyist artist to now being a paid artist. You know, I've made a video about intrinsic versus extrinsic value, why people should not do photography for a living. And I talk about this very concept, but just to go over it briefly, if you start to do things for money, then you're going to be transitioning into doing things for extrinsic value, which is you're going to be seeking the money, you're going to be seeking the fame, you're going to be doing all that. But if you do stuff as a hobbyist without doing paid work, you're gonna be focused more on the intrinsic value, which is you're doing things for what you love. You do it because it's fun, you're doing it for all those reasons. So if you switch to being a freelance photographer, you might lose that sense of passion, that sense of love, a sense of drive for the art. And that's something at the end of the day that I need to definitely work on myself. When it comes to freelance photography, I always have to remember that I'm doing this because I love to do it, not necessarily because of the paycheck. You know, the paycheck is a secondary benefit to me loving what I'm doing, you know. And I think a lot of people, when they do get into freelance photography, they start to realize that, you know, they're not doing it for the right reasons anymore. They're doing it because of the money, because they need a job. And to all those people who are really considering doing freelance photography, consider this other alternative. If you want to just do photography for fun and you enjoy it as a passion, as a hobby, I would really consider just getting a different job and then doing freelance or just doing regular photography on the side, because freelance photography is not what it seems. You know, that's the truth about being a freelance photographer. It's extremely difficult. And you know, there's a whole other bunch of consequences that come with trying to be a freelance photographer. So being a freelance photographer definitely is not for everybody, you know. And there's plenty of photographers that I know that are more than happy with just doing photography as a hobby. You know, they don't need to make it a living. They don't need to make it a career. They just love to do it just because, you know. I think that's the majority of photographers, you know. I don't think everyone really wants to be a freelance photographer, but to those who are considering it, you need to make sure that, you know, the passion comes first and the money comes second. I think that's something that you guys really need to take away from this video and something that's really important. So let me know what you guys think about being a freelance photographer. I know it's pretty sweet if you do end up making it, but not everyone does. It's a very competitive field. So let me know what you guys' thoughts and opinions are down in the comment section down below. Comment, subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next one.